Hello, everybody, and hello, Michael. Lovely to be with you all again. We are, of course, going to switch over to Michael for introductions in a moment, but I thought I would just share. I've had a most interesting week because, of course, last week we were talking about the Gunas, those three energies or qualities, and I didn't intend to set myself homework. I know you set us a task, Michael, through the week. But I did notice from time to time, even moments if I was in the shower or cooking in the kitchen, moments where it would just pop into my head, what guna, what energy is dominant in this moment? And there'd be times I'd be like, oh, Rajas, Rajasic, there's so much movement in the mind. And then there'd be other times I was exhausted and could barely do the next task. And I'd be like, oh my goodness, Tamasic. I'm not
Lovely,
sure that I
lovely.
noticed too many Satwic moments, but I'm sure they were there. Maybe when we're enjoying the peace and the bliss, we don't always notice it. We're just soaking it up. But I didn't mean to so actively search for that in the week, but it just kind of announced itself, which was really lovely. So I'm wondering if for any of our listeners that happened for you. But otherwise, I just thought that was a nice lead in for today's session, Michael. So welcome.
Well, it was an excellent session, excellent lead in, Jacqui. I was going to make a sort of a similar type of comment in general, but that was just going to be the way I sort of do things. Whereas coming from you, and I'm sure again that many of the listeners and some, of course, the viewers um, would have done or had a go at doing the exercise. And it'll be very specific on that at today's exercise, because we look at it in more detail than we did last week. Last week was more like a general overall introduction. This week I go into some more detail and specifics, if you like. But that's exactly what I'd be hoping people will get out of this chapter, Jacqui, that and I won't sort of go into it now because it's in the material, but it's so important in our everyday life. It's who we are, these three gunas. It makes our personalities, our nature. Um, uh, Desires drive every human being, but then to achieve those desires the best we can, any individual, we've got to use the three qualities, the three universal energies. And if we're using basically Tamas energy to rule our life or run our life, well, it's not going to be much of a life, really, is it? If we're using the Rajasic one predominantly, well, it's going to be a very hectic life. You might accomplish a lot, but you're going to be dog-tired and, all that sort of stuff. So the idea is, of course, to understand more about Sattva, the guna of Sattva, and to try and operate more and more from that karma, stiller, higher consciousness. It means using buddhi. The other two are driven totally by the ego. So again, that's the two armies on the battlefield, the two wolves that are within each person. So,
and I think what's just occurred to me more deeply now, I mean, I knew this before, but there's always layers. Every time you discuss something or read
yes,
something or talk about it
yes,
with someone, it just sinks in a little bit more deeply.
yes,
And I think what I'm sort of remembering now is that we do all as human beings generally have one predominant energy. But
yes,
as you were explaining last week to everyone, we've got all of these qualities within us. And I think what I was noticing for myself over this past week is the ebb and flow of those in the week and how they're almost like a tide. They sort of roll in and, they roll out. And yeah, it's an interesting play, isn't it? Your lifelong journey of your predominant guna and how that plays out,
yeah,
but then this sort of flowing of the tides in and out through day. Like, of course, Tamas is going to be more predominant at the end of the day when you're exhausted. I think just the recognition of that. Then maybe it's a bit softer, it's a bit more gentle for people, because if you do find yourself in that state at the end of the night, you're not too harsh and judgmental, like, oh my goodness, Tamas has set in. It's just like, oh, I've lived a full day. Actually, it's kind of natural that a little bit of inertia and lethargy will be present.
yes. Yeah, well, and just on that last point, I'll be mentioning that all of these three qualities have got a positive and negative aspect, a godly or demonic aspect. So tamas isn't all bad. Like, you got to sleep, so sleep's tamas. Or when you're tired and you just rest for half an hour or an hour or something, well, that's tamasic, but it's useful, it's positive. So they've all, you've got to have rajas, because if you don't have rajas, well, then you're not doing anything, you're not active enough, and you become too tamasic. So even a sattvic person, or someone who's trying to operate from a higher level of sattvic energy, still has to use and needs those other two qualities.
Yes.
But it's like, I love your reference to tides coming and going. Everyone sort of understands that. Well, I touched last week, didn't I, on in the old days, the um, musical instruments and TVs and stuff used to have like lights moving up and down on the screen. Well, I'll be talking about the Gunas and using the example of bar graphs to illustrate the point I'm trying to make. But that's a very useful thing that I think that I'm not sure if it's, I don't sort of do much electronic stuff these days, so I don't know if that still operates on equipment today, electronic equipment. But if it does, and anyone's got it and that, well, just be aware that those lights going up and down, and different heights constantly changing is exactly what you're referring to, Jacqui, with the tides ebbing and flowing. Like we can wake up in the morning and be in a fantastic mood. Then we get a phone call or an email, and suddenly we go from Sattwa right down to the depths of Tamas.
Mm.
Oh, Jesus, life's bloody shit, if I can sort of say something like that. So you can see how quickly it changes. So your bar graph that was up here in Sattva suddenly disappears almost, and Tamas takes its place. So we're constantly balancing our daily life, our daily activities in whatever mood, whatever word we're saying, whatever circumstance we're in. So you go to work, you're there, and you spark everyone up like you've told us a few times. That's lovely. But then something can happen during the course of the day, and suddenly that spark goes out. Now, there's nothing good or bad or whatever about it. Is just that that's life, and we need to understand that, and that's how we can control or gain control of our lives and our moods.
Mm.
So when we see something happening, we can very quickly analyze what it is, that it's sort of either in our control, and a lot of the times it's not, and we're just then reacting willy-nilly to whatever it's presented, or if it is in our control, well, we can adjust at that point to stop doing or saying what we're doing or saying and transfer into another direction.
Mm.
But if
It's
you
an
don't,
important.
go on.
No, sorry, you continue.
Oh, just to finish, to say that, I'll be explaining it. It's important that you can't do anything unless you know what you're doing. And so that's the knowledge that's important, Jacqui and listeners.
Yes.
So I'll be making the point that everyone on the planet is using all their three gunas. Whether they've ever heard of the word or understand it or anything, that's what everyone's doing. What we're doing here with this material, Jacqui and listeners, is by understanding it, that gives us control. That means we can shape our lives and reshape our lives and lead them better than what we've been leading them, which will make us happier, more satisfied, relaxed human beings.
Yes. And that was the point I was feeling to make, was it's the consciousness part, isn't it? It's the being
Yes,
aware of
yes,
what's happening
yes,
that's so
yeah,
important. And the other part I'm reminded of for people is that inner connection to what is going on and what we're bearing witness to and what's changing is important. And I'm aware that a lot of people don't have that, and from time to time, myself included, or that there's a delay. Like when you said, gave the example about sometimes we can wake up and be fabulous, and I think we all know that. And I noticed that sometimes I can go through the day and it's, fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. And then a few things happen. And then all of a sudden there's like a bit of a murky, sinking, kind of bit gut wrenching kind of feel. And it's
yes,
almost like I have to play catch up. I'm like, hang on, something's happened. This morning it was fabulous. A series of events have unfolded. I can't really pinpoint the feeling to any one of them. But for me, I often pull myself up in life and I pause at that point. I'm like, what changed that? What's the feeling in relation to? Because often if we can link it back to something and realize what's the worry, what's the problem, what's the concern, what's being caused, or what is the cause, this way, that way, whichever way we're trying to process it. I know that's a slight digression from the Gunas, the conversation we're having,
no,
but in a way it's really important, because I think if people understand themselves better and understand how we transition from that to this, it helps unravel it in terms of what do we do with that? Where are we going next with that?
yeah. No,
Um,
that's not. contrary, that's an
Okay, all right.
essential part, Jacqui,
Good.
vital part. Um, and how you described it again is crystal clear and beautiful. We need to trace then, if that's what's occurred in your day, and it occurs just about in every human being's day, one way or another. We need to go back to where was the change from that Sattvic sort of mood that was going through most of the day, and then suddenly it started to sort of go downhill. Yeah, what was it there? Um, it'll be something that disagreed with your belief system, your desires. Everything's going all right according to the way you want it, your desires, and then suddenly, for whatever reason, someone or something's interfered with that, and so what desires what's called thwarted. It comes to a brick wall, and we don't like that. We want our desires to continue. So, um, desires, as I said at the very start, drive everyone's existence. That's your computer program that you bring in. We've all got our own speciality desires, and the top ones that we're spending a lot of energy and time on in our lives. We've got lesser ones, and we've got lots of little tiny ones. Most of the tiny ones, doesn't matter who gets in your way or whether you get it or not, we don't care. But once you start going into the medium ones and the big ones, well then all hell can break loose very quickly.
Mm. And
Anyway,
one question, I know you're keen to get to your material, and I am sidetracking you a little with a start in this fashion,
that's
but
good.
I've been pondering this week, where exactly do our desires and the parts that we bring in each lifetime, where are they contained? Which part of us do they live in?
Well, they don't sort of live really anywhere, in that you can't operate on them or cut yourself open and find them and whatever. But some people say even in this sort of work, that it's in the mind, the mental aspect of the being. For me, it's in the emotional part of the being, what we call the heart.
But from life to life, how are they carrying over?
Well,
That's more
they're
my
carrying
question.
over. They're carrying over in like it's. I haven't got my book with me. I could show the picture on it, but I can do that easy enough next week. Between embodiments, the purpose of, or one of the purposes of the soul, other than providing everyone with the life force, the prana, and the consciousness in the being. So there's consciousness, and then there's a lot of consciousness, which in us is a soul. That soul's job is to carry over, like what I call the USB stick or computer
Yes,
program. It doesn't exist. You can't see it. But all of the human beings, individual human beings, accumulated over all their lifetimes of their positive and negative aspects, called your karma, is stored in that memory stick. And the soul just, the body drops. We call it like a change of clothes, or old car doesn't go anymore and you buy a new car. So we get a new body, and the same soul comes into it, the spark of divinity, and it's carrying your program. So
beautiful.
from lifetime to lifetime, each person, the idea is that in every lifetime, we're working on this computer program. Just like we do with your computer. You do a lot of computer work, right? When you don't want anything anymore, what do? You delete it. So when we say, what was it that caused my problem today? And we say, oh, it was just because so-and-so said something and I took offense at it or I got upset. Well, I'm going to decide that those things aren't going to upset me. So suddenly you've altered that. Every time someone said that, I'm going to react this way. Now you're typing in a new program that says, I'm just going to see it for what it is. It's their Gunas playing out, and I've got no control over what someone says to me or does to me. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you. That's my understanding too, but it's just good for you to say and good for all of us to discuss and rehear and embed more deeply. All right. Now I'm going to hand over to you in an official capacity.
Yeah, all right. Well,
And I hope
um,
that's been a useful lead into your material and that you're not sweating looking at the clock thinking, my
it,
goodness, she just chewed
it's
up 15 minutes.
well, you have, but it's a fantastic leading. But I'm still going to try and whip through mine as well. But I should be able to do it, pretty because a lot of it just follows on from last week, and
Lovely.
so I'll just continue on. So hello to you, Jacqui, and listeners. If I didn't say hello to everyone, we continue today with podcast 29, which is part 2, which completes chapter 14 on the 3 Gunas. Chapter 14, as we've just been discussing on the 3 Gunas, is very, very important chapter. And we've got off to a great start. So last week we looked in great detail at these 3 qualities, briefly summarised in the individual this way. So I've just given 3 examples for each individual, the mind, the body and the heart, as just quick examples, reminding everyone or helping them understand more clearly. So in a basically sattvic or predominantly sattvic person living their life, the mind is usually clear, bright, perceptive and efficient. The heart is loving, open, responsive and magnanimous. And the body feels light and fresh, agile, alert and at ease. Lovely qualities, aren't they, Jacqui?
Beautiful. I can feel my body just tingling a little bit, even hearing those lovely words.
We all aspire for that, and many of us are doing that, but we maybe just obviously could improve on it, and we'd like to improve on it. So that's hence the understanding of this sort of material. The Rajasic person, their mind is basically completely restless, crowded and agitated. The heart's either excited, jubilant or euphoric, or it's frustrated, angry, jealous and suspicious. And it constantly fluctuates up and down, just like you've given 2 or 3 examples already, Jacqui. And the body's tense, stressed, restless and tired. So when people say, I'm always tired, I'm stressed, I feel tense, these sorts of things. When we're tense, we go and get massages or we go, hot tub therapy. We want to relieve it. We want to get rid of it. Well, that's only a temporary measure. It's nice, but it's only temporary. You've got to get rid of what's the cause of it. What was it that caused you to go from being in a good mood to suddenly a turn? There's a cause there. So we need to look at the cause, find it, and eliminate it. We can eliminate all the causes, everyone. It just requires knowledge and then requires some effort and some perseverance by the individual to do it. But we can be if you want to be the master of your destiny. A lot of people say that, and that will understand it to some degree or other, but you're pretty hopeless at carrying it out. So to be master of your own destiny means you've got to master your ego. And once you master your ego, well, then you're in control of your mind, your emotions, your 5 senses and your body. That's very, very significant. But it's just a process. It can be understood and has to be practiced. All right.
Very reassuring.
Then the Tamasic person's typical tendencies or qualities are that their mind is dull, heavy and sluggish. Their heart's cold, closed and uncaring. Their body's indolent, inert and lethargic. We know people like this. Yeah, it's not being judgmental or critical or anything. It's just that's who they are. And that's why they are, because they're predominantly operating from that particular guna, just like we know people who are very active and all out there, and that's most people on the planet, and then there's still the ones. And we can be all 3 when we are all 3 at different times, but we can deliberately fluctuate and become more and more sattvic, that first lot I read out, and less of the other 2. All right?
Beautiful.
Swami Sitchadananda in one of his books describes these qualities in a totally different way, but one that's also very important for the long-term aspirants of understanding it from an aspect of their spiritual journey, Jacqui. So he says simply that the sattvic guna could be looked upon as the door into the kingdom of joy, means the kingdom of self-realization or self-enlightenment. The rajasic guna could be seen as the force that we can harness to take us to that door. So we need the movement, we've got to do things. But on the other hand, the negative side of it is that force, when it's unharnessed, can lead us away from the door. Yeah. So we're too busy chasing and running after all other things, not only after, but also away from. And then the tamasic guna, which simply blocks us even getting to that door. So he uses the 3 gunas to say, well, it can, the sattvic guna will finally get you to the door and through it. Rajas is the movement that'll take you along the journey, and Tamas is what'll try and block you every inch of the way.
What a
Yeah.
lovely description.
Yes, yeah, I thought you'd like it. I'm
I
glad.
do.
Yeah,
And even just the word of harness straight away just pops back into my head the image of the chariot. It's like,
yeah,
are we holding the reins and consciously moving forward, or is everything completely unruly and the horses
yeah,
run off and the reins are dropped and
yeah.
chaos
Yeah,
presents?
yeah, again, excellent reference to the very start of the teachings of the Gita, where if anyone looks at the picture closely, you'll always see that Krishna, the higher self in you, in any human being, is got hold of the reins. Arjuna next to him's let go. He's passed the reins over to Krishna. Well,
Very powerful symbolism, isn't it?
it is, Jacqui, very powerful. But you wouldn't understand it just from the words. So then you've got to read what's behind the cover on the book to go back to that. But you've picked up on that beautifully. Well done. Well done. And so I'll continue on, Jacqui. Having some understanding of what these gunas are and how they operate in each person as their individual qualities that determines their personality and way of living. So I've already touched on that. The three gunas is what everyone at this moment is saying, thinking, doing, positive or negative, and it's from tamasic or rajasic or sattvic. That's the sole aspect of every human being. All right. We need to really get our heads around it, folk, to understand it. It's not impossible, but once we get the understanding, and then like you started off, Jacqui, you observed it this week, it opens up a whole new world for every human being. And as you keep doing what you've done this week on those occasions that you've referred to, you'll do more of that over the coming year and years, the rest of your life, what's called perfecting yourself or polishing up. All right. It's important to understand that every individual on the planet has all of these three gunas constantly operating and changing within us in our physical, sensory, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects. So all three gunas, every human being in every part of their being, whether it be mental or emotional or whatever. For the people who are more advanced on their spiritual journey, they'll be focusing more and more on the sattvic guna, the qualities in there, and liking them and wanting to operate more from them. And the more they do that, I'll mention it, it'll eventually lead to bhakti yoga, a devotion of love, the devotion. Your love for the Lord and unity with the Lord starts to supersede your love for holidays, jobs, children, husbands, wives, or everything else. You'll still love them, but there'll be a more truthful hierarchy operating in a person's life. So all of us are predominantly either sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic by nature, but also have the other two qualities operating to a lesser degree. A simple way of understanding this, Jacqui and listeners, is with the use of bar graphs. And I'm going to ask sort of a little bit of a difficult, maybe for some people who aren't good at bar graphs or whatever, but it's not too complicated. Imagine a sheet of paper, and you all know bar graphs, they go up like a column. Yeah. And on that bit of paper, visualize three bar graphs, and they'll all be different heights. One small, one big, and one medium, or whatever. And they'll be representing the three gunas in each individual people. All right, so everyone's got that in their mind, three bar graphs on a sheet of paper. So I'm going to give the percentage breakups of a typical sattvic, a person operating from a higher sattvic aspect in their life. So the biggest graph will be S, Sattva. And you could write in there whatever you like, but it'll be up in the, well above the 70, 75, 80, 85. Yeah, and it'll vary, keep varying all the time. But I've just made it 75% Sattva. The next graph will be considerably smaller, 20%, and that'll be Rajas, and then 5% Tamas. So they won't have very much tamas in their life. they'll have a physical body, they'll be sleeping when they need to sleep and so on, but their minds will be still, all of those sorts of qualities. Okay. Then we go to the Rajasic personality. So instead of a very high graph being Sattvic, theirs is going to be Rajas. Then the next one will be Sattva, because they're sort of going, and that's part of being Sattvic, some go in them and energy and achieving things and being motivated and all of that. So that could be, say, 70% Rajas, 20% Sattva, and 10% Tamas. They're still leaning a bit more towards the Tamasic ones. And the Tamasic person, well, their biggest graph obviously is going to be Tamas. The next one's going to be Rajas, so you might be 80% Tamas, 15% Rajas, and only 5% Sattva. There's just barely a spark of consciousness in those beings that just allow them to be as Tamasic as they want to be. Is that all making sense,
What a
Jacqui?
useful exercise. My goodness. I've been pondering this through the week also. I've been pondering how much how much sattva in me, how much rajasic energy.
Which one did you think there was the most of, Jacqui?
Well, to be honest, it's really difficult. Like, even as somebody who has contemplated these things over a long period of time, it's a more challenging exercise than I thought. It made me realize too, like, there was part of me that probably thought, no, I've got like a reasonably large amount of sattvic energy. And I felt quite confident that people who know me would say the same. But then there's times where, and look, maybe this is, I do have a very strong inner critic, a voice of, oh, come on, you're deluding yourself. No, not possible. I'm a pretty active person too. So it did occur to me that there is a reasonably large chunk of Rajasic energy as well. I know there's Tamasic also. I do feel a bit lazy and uninspired at times, but I would say for me, that is a much smaller part of my life. I am a bit of a go-getter and can make things happen. But I did find it a more challenging exercise than I thought. And I'm not sure that I've arrived at the final numbers for my bar graph.
Um, well, I could help and give you some idea, but I won't.
Oh, okay.
I'll leave it for you to ponder on some more fully. But
Sure.
everything you're saying is fantastic, and is what everyone needs to do and keep doing more and more. And now that you understand all this, um, you haven't got very much Tamas in you, Jacqui. That's and I think that you take after your dad pretty much there. I used to be very, very Rajasic, as you know, in much of my life, and I've tried to take big steps towards becoming more sattvic. So, you still got a predominant one, but you're working, from my observation and things you're saying, even in these podcasts, working very hard to bring the gap between two of them closer together. And eventually, not too far down the track, I don't think you'll switch them around. If you can read between what I'm saying and
Yeah, that's not difficult to read between. I think everyone can read that.
I was trying to be subtle and nice, father.
Oh,
I'm probably
blunt delivery.
I'm going to cop a bit of flack from some of my students. Oh, geez, that was a bit tough, Dad. No, it's all good. You're all right.
It's all good. We're all just doing the best we can, aren't we?
Yeah,
And
you are.
it's relative, isn't it? Because what's occurred to me in you saying that, and there is clarity in that, and I receive it and I hear it. It's relative as well to what people, like how people see you operate in the world. Because I think people might describe me differently to sometimes how I feel internally, whereas you would know me more so. You get to watch more of my life, and that high energy component of doing and thinking and changing it up and like next thing and what else. So recognizing that there is a large amount of inner activity that then manifests things outwardly also.
Yeah. And you're saying how people judge you and that or see you. I've got a line on that in the next minute or two, so I'll continue on.
Yes.
Um, so the examples I've given there with bigger figures for Sattva and Rajas and Tamas, you're more in the category where Sattva would be, Rajas would be, say, 60%. Um, Rajas would be say, Sattva would be say 40%. What's that? No, that's too many.
Too many.
Yeah.
But I get where you're going.
Yeah. So the gap between Sattva and Rajas is not a big gap, and but that's how everyone does it. You go through the three gunas and eventually switch to the highest one. No one can go from Tamas, Jacqui, and listeners straight to Sattva. You've got to get movement out of that indolence and laziness and slothfulness. So the being has to first go into Rajas, and then from Rajas, yeah. But we can do that even in our own day, operating from a higher level of Sattva. If you find that you're vegging and you've just become a bit of a blob, you'll be aware and you can say, okay, well, I need a quick walk around the block, or just get up and do some star jumps, or deep breaths or something, just to get some rajas into you, to get you back into that sattvic state. All right.
And don't we all know that? Everyone can relate to that. Times where you feel a bit lazy, unmotivated, but you make the effort, you do the thing, and all of a sudden you're like, I feel so much better. Why don't I do that more often?
Yeah, well, we'll just, all I'm saying is we just keep getting better at it once we understand it more and can observe it quicker, and then we react. And so it's a process, and it's got its own legs. So I'll continue on, Jacqui. It's very important to also understand that these three graphs representing the qualities we are operating from are constantly changing in each individual as their mood changes. Okay, and you've described this on a number of occasions today. Not only during the day, but from day to day throughout our entire lives, and also from life cycle to life cycle to life cycle. So it's a continuum, what we're talking before about how we transfer that computer program from one embodiment to the next embodiment. So it's a continuous process, everyone. Whenever any two gunas languish or diminish, the other one predominates. So that's this reference to the lights going up and down. For these are the whole flat fabric of life. Each person portrays by his life which of the three gunas is habitually dominant in him. So that's the reference you just made, Jacqui. We portray every minute of the day our guna balance. And for anyone who's able to observe or understands the gunas, and even if you don't understand them by name, if you're being angry, and it's a room full of 100 people, all not 99 people can see that person's being angry, can't they? Yeah, they can see their guna balance operating. Or if they've just done a heroic act, oh, that was beautiful. That man's a hero, or that woman, or whatever. All right, so. And I made a little comment to tie it in with the saying of Jesus. This is what Jesus means when he says, by their actions you shall judge them, in the Bible, in the Christian teachings. People say these days, oh, you mustn't judge anyone. Yeah, well, we're not talking about judging, oh, she shouldn't be wearing that dress, she should be wearing this dress. That's just crazy sort of judgmental sort of stuff. But what he's saying here is, Jesus saying, observe what the person's saying and doing. And that's their way, that's who they are. That's how they're living. That's it. There's nothing criminal or unfair or anything about that. That's just truthful. All right. So I'll just continue on, Jacqui. The gunas themselves are neither good nor bad. I mentioned that earlier on. They're simply three pure energies provided by God. Okay. So what's the problem?
Again, hang on, that's a powerful one. I just feel like that's got a land a moment in my body. That's powerful.
Yeah. So then what's the problem?
Sometimes the most power comes in the most simple definition. Can you say that again for everybody?
Yes, yeah.
Please.
The next, there's two lines there, and then there's the next two lines. So there's no problem with what I've just read in those two lines. Yeah, everyone would agree with that, and that's beautiful. So I was asking the question, what's the problem? So I'll read it out and what the problem is. The gunas themselves are neither good nor bad, listeners. They are simply three pure energies provided by God. All those three energies, everything in the creation works according to those three gunas, and they work purely. The moon, the sun, the tides, space, time, everything does everything what it's supposed to do, because it doesn't have free will. It's just working according to what's called divine law. Human beings, on the other hand, everyone, have been given free will. God chucked the serpent into the Garden of Eden, right? That's the ego. And he gives us free will. So if he gives us free will, he says you can use these three gunas whichever way you like. So an active person or tamasic person can become active and stab someone and kill them. Yeah. So they're using those bottom two qualities. It's how we as humans use them, either positively or negatively, that makes the difference with the gunas. So is that clear, Jacqui? Everything in the creation, the three gunas are operating how they're meant to operate, and it never changes for the entire length of the creation. Only human beings, having free will, can use these gunas whichever way they want. Just as way as they can use their mind whichever way they want, or their emotions, or their body, or their five senses, but they're only ruled eventually by the three gunas. And all of it's ruled by the desires that the person holds. Okay? So I'll just give some positive positive ways that it's used. So the predominantly tamasic person needs to become more rajasic, more active, start doing something physically, mentally, emotionally. This is how the tamasic people can use these three qualities, Jacqui. Get started, get moving, start doing things mentally, emotionally, and physically. The predominantly rajasic person needs to reduce their desires and become stiller and aim at becoming more sattvic. So the rajasic people need to use their qualities to calm themselves down. Stop running around so furiously. Stop the mind constantly moving, the circling mind, the monkey mind, the chattering monkey mind, and so on. And the predominantly sattvic person needs to eliminate any lingering egoic attachments to happiness and knowledge. Sattvic people, and I'm going to describe that more fully, Jacqui, on the next page, have got a liking for life's good. I enjoy all of this. Well, it's an attachment. It's still a desire, even though it's nice to achieve and it's nice to have. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that you can't have that, but if you have a claim to it, yeah, it's mine. I've worked real hard. I deserve this. All these sorts of things. Well, then it takes on a taints it or tarnishes it. And the sattvic person needs to shift more of those qualities into devotion to the Lord, the bhakti yoga. And negatively, the three gunas through their threads, because remember I said gunas were qualities and also were threads, and threads bind. So any of the three gunas through their threads can bind or imprison when we contaminate them with our attachment to them, which I'll explain now in a bit more detail. So last week, Jacqui, we touched on, you mentioned at one point that you could understand being bound by the tamasic guna and being bound by the rajasic guna, but you were sort of a bit not really clear on how you could be bound by the sattvic guna. So I'll run through these now. So three specific topics, if you like, listeners. How the tamasic guna binds us first. It binds us through ignorance. The product of darkness binds one by their attachment to the threads of delusion, folly, indolence, lethargy, sloth, and uncaring. It confines one to a dull, insipid life, bereft of action and reaction. The person exists like an inert, lifeless stone. By nature, it is very destructive for that human being. A very large proportion of humanity fit this group. Their bondage is likened to heavy, rusty iron chains, Jacqui. We know these people. We see a lot of them, unfortunately, on the news and things like that. They've got a lot of work to do ahead of many, many lifetimes. We help them where we can. Society's got to look after them. That's all part of the deal. You can't, they don't warrant going to jail or anything, but they're just learning at a very basic level hard aspects of life. All that sort of stuff. Now, how the Rajasic guna binds people, and this is the overwhelming majority of people on the planet, Jacqui, are predominantly Rajasic. Passion. Passion binds through its attachment to incessant activity, pursuing endless desires and passions, both positive and negative. So people are constantly chasing after this, and that. I like that, I don't like that. I want, but they're also running away. Yeah, I like him or her, but I don't like him or her. I like going there, but I don't like going there. Positive and negative aspects of desires. A thirst for acquiring and clinging to worldly things. Look at the most wealthy people, hundreds of billions of dollars, but they want more hundreds of billions of dollars. The ones who've got the power, the Putins and the Xi Jinpings and President Trump and our Prime Minister, they all love power. Everyone loves power. The ones in local council want to get to state parliament. The ones in state parliament eventually have got a desire to get to federal parliament. Yeah. So it doesn't matter, in any line of work, everyone's wanting promotion and so on. Acquiring and clinging to worldly things, whether they be people or sensations that attract the senses. This attachment eventually leads to greed, which then leads to anger, folk. The majority of people, as long as rajas predominates, one can never be free from action. So it's rajas, it's like a drug, all of the three gunas can be like a drug, if you like. You overdose on the other two, and you can even overdose a bit on the sattvic one as well. And now this one particularly for you, Jacqui, but for others as well, of course, some more clarity maybe on how sattvic guna can bind us. Purity, so it's a pure, of the gunas, but it binds the calm person by its attachment for desiring constant happiness, joy, and illumination. Also an attachment for acquiring new and more sacred knowledge, accumulating it and boastfully displaying it, whether that be by way of meditation or doing selfless work, etc. A sattvic person short of self-realization still remains bound to worldly knowledge and happiness. Only a minority of people seeking truth and liberation are sattvic. Their bondage is likened to fine gold chains. I don't know if I mentioned with the Rajas, but they're bound by silver chains. So we're talking iron chains for the Tamasic people, silver chains for the Rajasic people, and gold chains for the Sattvic people. And I wrote in there, we need to understand clearly, Jacqui and listeners, that these chains of all three gunas, whether they're made of gold, silver, or rusty iron, keep us being in bondage or imprisonment in the world of Maya. So in any of those qualities still keep you. Now, some people, might be a bit puzzled about this reference to gaining new knowledge and that. I mean, that's what we're all doing, focusing on very heavily. It's not so much the new knowledge, it's the boastfulness of it. The person says, aren't I smart now? I've accumulated all this knowledge. They want to show off and say, oh, I can quote, all the teachings and all of what Buddha says and all of this. There's pretend gurus in India that get caught up in all of this. Tourists love it. They don't understand. But people say working, Meals on Wheels, if it still exists these days, or in Salvation Armies, or helping in any way. But often they'll say, to everyone constantly, oh, I do this and that. I help the poor, or I do that. It's lovely that they do it, and even if they say that, it tarnishes it a little bit, but that's their attachment to it. Yeah, I know it, I do it. Look at me a bit, name and fame, and whatever it might be.
Is it not really the true state, Michael? Is it like a pretending for a particular state?
Well, yeah, it's a pretense to it, but the people are actually doing that. Like Sattvic, people who aspire to be Sattvic, accumulating knowledge and doing good work and selfless action and meditating and all of these things. But if you go around big noting yourself, or more importantly, putting the claim on it, Like when we say I am, I do, and I know, um, that's ego. I ego. I ego have done this. I ego have learned all this material. Look how smart I am. So the material's good. That's sattvic. But the other person, when you stop putting a claim onto it, an attachment to it, that you're the doer, you understand more clearly, Jacqui, and the listeners, everyone. This is a slightly off, but a very important point, which will develop over the next few chapters anyway. That you understand that you're an instrument of God's. We eventually come to understand. I'm sure you've come across the concept, Jacqui, and some of the listeners. So we realise that in essence, we can't do anything. We've been given this body. We've been given these emotions and mind and senses, and we've been given the spark of God within us. And all we're doing is trying to make sense of all of that. Yeah. So in essence, we don't do anything except sort out our stupidity, if you like, or our untruthfulness, or whatever's getting in the way. Does that help
That
understand
helps.
that?
Yeah, that helps enormously.
So we're going a little bit over, but I've only got a few
No, that's
things
good.
to talk.
It's interesting. I'm sure people are with us, remain with us.
Winding down now, Jacqui and listeners. Krishna concludes his teachings, you'd like that, concludes his teachings on the three gunas in chapter 14 by explaining to him how transcending the gunas leads one to Brahman. So we need to transcend from Tamas to Rajas to Sattva, and then we need to transcend all of those, including Sattva, to reach Brahman. All three have to be let go, have to be relinquished. Arjuna had asked, how does a man rise beyond the gunas? And Krishna replied, by bhakti yoga, the devotion to God. When no small self remains, that means no egoic self, Jacqui, no small self remains, he merges with the unmanifested spirit that existed before creation and which is the supreme abode of being, of everlasting dharma, law, righteousness, cosmic shelter, and endless bliss. So that's the transformation, the eventual end of the journey. So Jacqui and listeners, to finish off, there's nothing new about these three gunas. They've existed since the beginning of creation, and all beings and humans have been constantly using them. Desires drive every aspect of our lives, and these various energies, qualities of the gunas, allow us to chase after or run away from them endlessly. All right? What is new, however, this is the important part, Jacqui and everyone, I'll leave you on a very positive note. What is new, however, is that we're now gained new and deeper insight into how these three qualities and their corresponding threads operate within each of us, either to our betterment or our detriment. So they're there to either help us or take us away from the path. So that we have the ability to, and that we have the ability to observe which guna is predominant within us. So you started this whole session off, Jacqui, of your own accord, saying that you observed which guna was predominant, didn't you, at the start? And we've touched on it another 3 or 4 times. And that we can make the necessary changes. And I've stressed this a number of times as well, to finish up. We can observe these gunas operating now that we understand them clearly. They've always been there, but we've got labels to them now and definitions. And we can understand them operating, observe them operating within us, Jacqui, and we can observe them operating in any other human being and 8 billion people on the planet. Almost instantly, you'll be able to recognise that person's predominantly tamasic, that person's predominantly rajasic, and that person's predominantly sattvic. You won't come across too many of the latter. So this is of immense benefit to anyone seeking truth and liberation. All of our listeners, Jacqui, you included me, we're all seeking truth and liberation. This is an important part of that journey. Chapter 14, so these 18 chapters are unfolding beautifully. And I'll just leave one last remembrance for everyone. Remember that the objective life is to reshape one's character, upward in pursuit of a high ideal. We're wanting to go upwards. We're all wanting to go upwards. Whether we call it wanting to be happy, chasing happiness, whatever it is, that's what we aspire to. In the end, we come to realise that it's aspiring to understanding and connecting with our divine nature. This necessitates changing the inertia of Tamas into the passionate effort of Rajas and then channeling it into the calmness of Sattva. It is said that when one finally transcends the illusionary three gunas, your body consciousness drops away like a ripe cucumber severing itself from the vine. So we don't do anything, Jacqui, we just undo. You go through the process, you learn all this stuff, you change your character, and you'll sever yourself from this mortal existence, just like a cucumber when it's ripe. No one has to come along and pull it apart. It does that of its own accord. Just like a ripe fruit falls off the tree, well, the ripe human being falls off its tree of life, of human life, and it joins with the eternal. All right, Jacqui?
I'm having a moment of giggling here, Michael, and I know you and I have giggled a bit over this and danced around this point quite a few times. But I'm thinking of all of the times we've discussed self-realization, and the I think in the beginning you were using the word striving for, and I kept saying no, I'm not striving for it. And I think what you're saying about the cucumber has just really given me another little sentiment that helps frame it beautifully, in that when
Yes.
I have been saying to you, no, I'm not striving, like I
Yes,
understand very
I'll
clearly
remember.
the
I'll remember.
concept,
I'll
but this is
remember.
what I'm getting at, that for me it's not so an effortful. I'm just trying to live my life, all these little things. Which guna am I in? Or how can I be more kind? Or, oh, I'm a bit cross or angry, how can I change that into something more this or that? I'm just slowly unfolding the path, growing, evolving, being the best I can be with whatever circumstances are present, trusting in the process that when I do this over enough lifetimes and there's enough consistency, that like the cucumber, it'll just drop from the vine and the process will take care of itself. So that perhaps is another way I can reiterate that point from my
Right.
perspective, that I'm going about this
Beautiful.
spiritual path.
The word striving obviously didn't do it for you,
No, it
but
did not. It did
the
not.
cucumber
But a
severing from the
cucumber
vine. Yeah.
flopping off the vine is beautiful.
I got lots of way of saying these
Yeah,
things, Jacqui.
good,
So
good.
one doesn't work yet. But you do remember that when,
Yes,
eventually we got around to, I let go of the reference to striving and just said heading towards. Yeah. So
yeah,
I could have said you're ripening to
yes,
eventually
yeah.
fall
Beautiful.
off.
It's softer, isn't it? A little bit softer.
Yeah, whatever. But I'm glad that I read that bit out. I'd just like to read out, spell out, Jacqui, those 4 words for people who might, and I'd encourage them to look it up on Guna or not Guna, Google. um, and if you've got any Gitas, those of you who've got Gitas, please really make an effort to read chapter 14. And if you buy other Gitas late down the track, remember that that's really an important one. So I'd like to spell the words out so people know how they are. Might just add in there for the older people in particular that grew up like I did with the 3 goons. They were sort of 3 funny comedians.
Oh, yes. Oh, were they the Goonies?
No, just goons.
Oh,
The 3
goons.
goons.
Okay.
Yeah. And they did crazy things. Anyway, the gooners aren't them.
Yeah, no.
No,
No, totally
nothing,
different thing.
not related at all. So the word guna is the new word that maybe people have learned. Guna, guna. And then the guna means the qualities and the threads. Okay. And then there's 3 of them. Sattwa, Sattwa. Sometimes it's spelled Sattva, but pronounced wa, Sattwa. The A is pronounced as Sat, not Sat. And Rajas, 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 and Tamas, Tamas, Tamas. Maybe the listeners would like to, and you, Jacqui, would like to repeat after me. Gunas.
I think we've got that.
Oh, come on, Jacqui.
The school teacher in you just emerged.
Come on, Jacqui. All right, listeners, Jacqui doesn't want to do it. Who's brave enough? Guna, Sattwa. Yeah, oh, lovely. Raj is terrific. Tamas, well done. Oh, a bit disappointed there, Jacqui. And the exercise for this week is the one you shared with everyone that you've already done. I'd like you to observe as frequently as you can during this week while it's fresh in your minds, which guna you or someone else was operating from at any time you remember to observe, particularly yourself, really, and where you wanted to change it and did. So like you said, Jacqui, I wondered why I was floating up here and then sort of went down there. Well, that's what I'm meaning by that. Where did it change? What caused it to change? It'll be a bit tricky for a while, but you got to practice, like anything else. Practice your meditation, practice this, practice that. You'll get better at it, and it'll serve you to very good stead, everyone. So I'm well and truly done and dusted, Jacqui.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Michael. An absolutely delightful, excellent session. And I really feel like this one actually, I'm well aware that, of course, it's part of our ongoing podcast, like it's one episode in amongst the 40 we're going to do. But I can't help but feel like this actually could be a standalone something that people listen to. I'm thinking even when I promote it, like this is one that someone could just tune into and really take a lot from this, even if they weren't committed to listening to the whole entire
Yeah.
series. Beautiful. I
Well,
feel like we've really covered a lot of
yeah,
material.
most commentators in their Gita say when they're doing their commentary that this is that all the chapters in the Gita, of course, are beautiful, but they tend to stress that this one is really, and like I said a number of times, it's because it's who we are. We're just a bunch of three gunas. Yeah, and you need to know that to be able to bring about changes, so you become predominantly a better guna. Like no one listening to this, Jacqui, would aspire to be a Tamasic type personality.
No.
And even though Rajasic has got a lot of positive aspects to it, it's also got a lot of drawbacks. Yeah, like I said, harnessed, it'll take us to the door, but not harnessed. If the reins of the chariot are in the egoic hand of the being, it can lead you to total destruction. You can murder someone. You can your marriage can split up. You can lose your whole business. You can get addicted to drugs. All sorts of things can happen. So in the end, everyone really aspires to the Sattvic guna, and even if they're not thinking about merging with the self or becoming realised, they're liking the idea of a peaceful life, less stress, less wasted energy, achieving more, all of those sorts of things, being of greater help to your fellow man, your family, your workplace, all of these sorts of things. All right.
Lovely. Well, thank you. Beautiful, beautiful session. Thank you, everyone. Delightful to have you tune in with us. And until next week, take care. See you later.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Keep well.